What is going on, and welcome to another episode of the Time Killers podcast. My name is Neil Rivera, and I'm once again killing time with a gray mane himself, Mr. Matthew Field. What's going on, Matt?
Just spending some time in Pywell.
Matthew, you've been spending a lot of time in Pywell, right? This is, of course, we're referencing Crimson Desert, arguably the one of the most anticipated game of the year. Definitely one of the biggest games of March. Matthew's been playing it and enjoying it. I have also been playing through Screamer, which is the latest anime racing game that came out during March. And Matthew and I have also dipped our toes into the Division Resurgence, which is the new mobile third-person shooter from Ubisoft in the Division franchise. But before we jump into that, we want to remind you guys that you can be part of the show. Submit your questions, your comments, hot takes over at timekillerspod.com/AMA. You can listen to any past episodes as well while you're up there. While you're listening to us, don't forget to leave us a subscribe, leave us a review, let us know how much you love us. And yeah, Matthew, without that, with all the self-promotion aside, let's jump right into it. Crimson Desert. Like I said, this is one of the most anticipated games of the year. This is the follow-up release from Pearl Abyss. So it's developed and published by Pearl Abyss. If you don't remember them, they're the guys who did Black Desert Online, the MMO. It's released on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series consoles, Windows PC, and interestingly enough, it's also available on Mac on the App Store. I had to confirm it, and it is there. You can buy it on Mac.
Yes.
So yeah, Matthew, this is, the elevator pitch for this is just essentially big, open, beautiful open world game. Think Tears of the Kingdom style exploration, open-ended, but really the selling point here is just the graphical fidelity and just the level of detail in the world. So Matthew, you've been playing Crimson Desert. Go ahead and let me know how long you've been playing and what are your thoughts on it so far.
So I'm about 15 hours in, which is not as many as some people. Obviously, this is a massive game, and I really, all of my opinions here are should be prefaced with the fact that I'm not, towards the end game here. I guess 15 hours in a game that's just this large is really not considered. I'm only just now feel like I'm getting into the mid game, basically, to where all the options are available to me. It's clear what the actual story is and what's going on. And I'm just, basically feeling like I have a good handle on the mechanics now.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so how are you feeling so far, just 15 hours in?
I think the last couple hours that I've played has really been pivotal for me, in that I feel much better about it than I did in those early hours. The learning curve in those early hours, as you are getting, there's so many mechanics in this game, and I know it's that's anybody that's been online and following anything in video games has heard about just how many mechanics there are in this game, and it is literally too many than I would be able to list them all out here. There's just too much. Even now at 15 hours in, I am still getting fed new mechanics. It really feels like it's easy to see how this game started out as a single player prequel or a expansion to their MMO Black Desert. Mm-hmm. Because they have taken essentially all the mechanics that you would find in an MMO and just put them in a single player, open world action game essentially.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of these things like cooking and crafting, a lot of these things, we can get into sort of the nitty gritty of some of the systems here in a little bit. But I imagine a lot of these things, as far as the mechanics of actually going through them, they probably feel familiar in the sense that they come from mobile MMOs and things like that, where really the only major difference here is that you're not really time gated or locked behind a paywall in these cases, right? Is that accurate, or is there more depth going on to some of these systems?
I mean, I would say the mobile game comparison is a little unfair here, just simply because these mechanics are very fleshed out.
Yeah.
Like this is more like what you would find in Black Desert Online. I'd never played Black Desert Online, but I imagine that the things you're doing in that game, like the suite of mechanics at your disposal, are pretty similar to what you have here. Like um like there's practically enough mechanics to have like a survival crafting game here. Like you were chopping down trees and mining
Yeah.
ore and stuff. Like all these things that you could like do as, you know, in like a specialization or something in an MMO, you can just do with your character here.
And all of these things are, yeah, all of these things I would say are separate from the like the main game, like so to speak, right? Like the main story is more of a traditional action adventure where you're fighting monsters, eventually fighting like bigger boss type enemies, or is there a survival crafting type focus in the main story, or really like like I guess my question, what I'm trying to get at is like how important are the mechanics to the overall just sort of like narrative, or is it more just an element of just giving you things to do in the world?
I think an excellent question, and it kind of strikes at the heart of what I dislike about this game, which is that at least across the 15 hours that I've played, the main story and just the story in general is a mess. It really feels like there's no cohesion to anything that is happening or that you're doing, partially because they just simply had to find a way to introduce all of these mechanics to you, and also give your character a reason to be in some of these situations. Like I imagine a more cohesive version, like if they were putting story first, some of the mechanics that you get in like the first 5 hours would be probably held until like hour 20 or something, like further along than I even am now. But they very clearly wanted to have that like Breath of the Wild style progression where you're given all of the mechanics that you have early, and then you're kind of free to explore. I actually think Breath of the Wild is they're very different games to play, but when you start thinking about like the sort of design ethos that each of these games were made, like created in mind with, you start to see a lot of similarities to how they're laid out.
Yeah, I've Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, like those are the games, like the modern open world Zelda games are the ones that I sort of go to as far as like a comparison point here. But yeah, like it really seems like the big difference here is really just the sheer volume of things to do here. So I guess this is a pretty good opportunity to just get into sort of the nitty gritty of some of these systems. So I'll kind of ask you like a top level question here, like 15 hours in, what is a mechanic or side quest or a system that you've interacted with that you really enjoy, and one that you similarly just like don't enjoy?
Oh boy. Okay, I'll start with the easy one. So this is a mechanic that I think is probably, I don't know, I feel like it's probably divisive. It's basically like Link's, oh man, I'm forgetting the ability. It's his ability where you can just like you tether to an item and then you can pick it up and rotate it and attach to other items.
Yeah. I've always called it like the God Hand ability, shorthand, but yeah, something I know which one you're talking about, like the one that allows you to just like pick up whatever.
Yeah, and so I mean that in a lot of situations in this game, that ability feels like totally superfluous. It's like it's a non-factor. Then you get into some situations which are like puzzle situations, like they're not quite like temples or they're not quite shrines, but they're situations where it's like ancient architecture and you're either trying to find a way to power it on or operate it or make it do something in some capacity, and you're solving a puzzle here with using tools like that ability. And there, like, you can the cynical take is to say like, oh, okay, they're just ripping off Zelda here. Like they saw something that they liked that they were doing, and they're just like, okay, we're going to throw that in every game. But my experience is that like that may be the case, but they didn't just phone it in. Like the puzzles here, and I haven't really seen that many people talking about the puzzles, but I found the puzzles that I've encountered to be actually very engaging and pretty good. Like I to the point where I hope, like I've seen, I've watched a bunch of streams of this as well, of like the mid and late games, and I've seen people getting stumped on some of these puzzles and how complicated they are and how they're making you use your tools and things. And I think, to a certain person who just wants to hack and slash their way through this game, that may be disappointing. But for me, that variety, I think, is the appeal here. The fact that you're not just doing the same thing for 100 hours, but you actually have quite a diverse array of activities to do. So yes, you have that steep learning curve of the mechanics, and yes, on a controller, there's just simply not enough buttons for it to all be very elegant. But over the course of the entire runtime of this game, I think that, I don't know if I'll end up finishing it all the way through, but I think that, I would personally be glad to have the diversity in terms of things you're doing.
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about the combat and the control scheme there. Let's get into it. Like, if you want to elaborate more on the control scheme, are you playing mouse and keyboard? Are you playing controller? What's working for you? What's not working for you? Obviously this is I think kind of the big point of contention around the game right now is that on controller it hasn't been very intuitive. So what's your experience been like playing it? And then like as far as like the actual combat, anything you can speak to there.
I think so. I'm predominantly playing with a controller. I am playing on PC, but I'm using a controller, and I think having it on PC really is the way to go if you like to play that way. In that I can switch back like to a keyboard when I want to do stuff that takes me through a lot of menus, or it doesn't really involve moving throughout the world. Like I just prefer the twin sticks for like combat, like when you're locking in on enemies and moving the camera. At the
something
same
about
time,
a third-person action game sort of demands a controller, in my opinion, as well. I
agree, and maybe that's just my console background talking, but I feel much more comfortable in those situations on a controller. So I'm using a controller for that. But it is like I said, it's nice to be able to like specifically the map, like being able to navigate the map super quickly without having to kind of clunkily zoom in and out using like the right stick or whatever. You can just kind of mouse wheel it and get to where you're going, where you want to select instantly. So I'm kind of doing the best of both worlds. But yes, I mean, like the complaints about the controller, control scheme are totally valid. There is like settings that you're going like 3 or 4 menus deep in the hot menus to try to, like, I think it's like to turn your lantern on or off. You hold left bumper, you use the right stick to select the lantern, you press A to click it, then you use the right stick again to go on or off, and you click A.
Whew,
Just like a basic thing like that is that complicated to do.
But I can understand, because there's so many things happening in this game that like it's impossible to do that in a contextual way, because that just becomes a programming nightmare, I think, at that point. I could definitely see how a lot of how this started as an MMO, and a lot of the shortcomings that sort of come from that. And as far as like the combat, I know one area we haven't really gotten into specifically is just the skill tree itself. It seems really expansive and like gives like there's a lot of room for player expression. So is there anything like as far as like how you've played so far that you can speak to?
Yeah, so I'm still that's one area where I feel like I still like it's going to open up more, because a lot of there are different. Okay, so there's you have your 3 different branches of the skill tree. It's like your health, your agility, and then effectively your magic.
Got it.
And you can spend points both on granting yourself abilities or just improving your stat pool for that section. Mm-hmm. So most of my early points that I've been putting in have been just giving me more health or more stamina. And so I've really just recently started picking more abilities to choose. And then you have like some interactions where like you'll get a weapon that has an ability, but you have to have a certain skill to be able to for that ability to essentially activate on the weapon. And then you have other abilities that just like come on weapons that you can't select via a skill tree. Like they're just like unique aspects of that weapon, which is pretty cool. I think one of the best weapons that I have so far is just has a random extra ability that when you do a finishing attack that like knocks a bunch of other people away, which is really nice. So there's a lot of depth there, and then like you have like you can learn like AoE abilities or like disengage abilities, like your basic. I mean, it's all kind of standard stuff. Like you have your shield charge ability, your whirlwind attack, for AoE, that kind of stuff. Then there is some more advanced mechanics that I haven't really dug too far into yet, but I mean, it does seem like there's a lot of depth to the combat options at your disposal that you can tailor based on the way you want to play, the weapon that you have, and how you spec into your character.
Yeah, that seems to be the part that is sort of calling to me the most as someone who, from the outside looking in, is definitely interested, but is sort of tepid because of some of the shortcomings. The sort of the skill tree and the sort of the different ways that you can express yourself in combat, like, just seem outrageous in all of the best ways. Like, it really seems that they've gone all in on just being able to, like, play the game and fight however you want to, whether it's hand-to-hand or ranged or just traditional melee. So I'm already seeing a lot of really cool stylish clips of people killing a bunch of dudes. So yeah, I mean, it's the potential is definitely there, and it definitely seems like, going back to what you were saying about the puzzles, it definitely seems like there's a communal element. There's definitely seems like there's a community forming around this game, calling out secrets, solutions to different puzzles. So this definitely has the potential of like to have the sort of social legs that something like an Elden Ring had, where people are sort of always continually calling out things. Yeah, I mean, one aspect, I think that we sort of touched on, but haven't really dove into so far, is just the initial reception versus sort of how the user reviews have evolved over time. Obviously this came out, it got a 79. It's sitting at a 79 on OpenCritic, so decent reviews from critics. Definitely a lot of them calling out things like the controls, and the complexity, just the sheer complexity, the bad story as some drawbacks. But really interesting over time. I will say, I looked at Steam reviews before we recorded this. On the same day that the review embargo lifted, it was 61% positive, but now over time, it's sitting at an 86% positive on Steam. So over time, it's only gotten, more and more in the positive realm for reviews. What do you make of that, Matthew? Like, it's, part of that, I think, is the way that Pearl Abyss has responded to some of the criticism. They've already patched some of these control issues, but overall, Matthew, what do you make of the sort of like critical groundswell that's forming around Black Desert, just among the community?
I think all of everything you just said is pretty. Like, I think it's all very explainable by the situation around this game. I mean, for one, we know that it's hard to review big games and when reviewers aren't given that much time. I think they were given 2 weeks to play through this game, which, for the size of this, you're either rushing through the main story and ignoring the side stuff, or you're doing the side stuff and you're probably not finishing the main story. Which is not a good experience. Like, that's never gonna influence a good, like, that's not gonna elicit a positive reaction out of a reviewer. And I think the other thing is that, like you mentioned, there's been a ton of patches that have come through, like, very quickly. I think, like, the biggest things for me were there was a day, like the day one patch, I believe, added a ton of more fast travel points. Whereas like one of the main complaints that I saw from reviewers is like you're backtracking a ton, you're running across huge like open expanses just for like 20 minutes at a time, just to try to like get back to someplace you were already. And they fixed that extremely quickly. Like they just put more like little nodes on the map that you can discover for fast travel, which, and I could see like apparently there wasn't even one at your base camp. Like you had to run from somewhere else to get to your base camp, which would drive me crazy.
That seems like a weird like oversight.
Yeah, I really don't know. The fact that they were able to fix it so quickly, but hadn't fixed it until they got the feedback from like the final version of the game, essentially, is weird.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, what do you make of just how because it almost strikes me as an MMO where, you know, March 19th this game drops and releases, and we're all jumping in assuming it's a 1.0. And granted, you know, games launch in all sorts of states these days, and updates, post-launch updates are hardly, you know, a new concept. But yeah, like it really seems like this is being updated and treated like it is a live service game where like the community feedback is being taken into account and almost overnight being, you know, implemented. Where like, yeah, like how did this stuff fall through the cracks in QA as well? I mean, it's a huge game, but it's, yeah, what do you make of just the sort of clip that this game's being updated at?
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to say that they're some kind of exception. I mean, games launch in rough states and are vastly improved by day one patches. Like basically every AAA release is that way now. So I'm not gonna. I don't love that as a practice, but it is what it is, and it's just like a fact of modern game development. I think how you miss things like that, though, my guess would be that it's related to some of the direction that QA was giving them. Like the other big thing that they patched was like you didn't have like a chest, like storage. Like you only had the amount you could carry on your person. And we haven't talked about the inventory stuff, but the inventory right up with the control scheme, I find the inventory management here like infuriating. I think that's if I had to pick one thing, the inventory management is probably my least favorite aspect of this. Like all the quest items that you get, and even ones that you use and like consume and have gotten information from, consume a spot in your inventory still. Like there's no sort of like quest, you know, key item section that doesn't contribute to your weight or anything like that. It just sits in your inventory along with everything else.
That's wild. It's funny that you mentioned that because I'm playing through Resident Evil Requiem finally, and that's something that playing through the gray section stands out. But that's a horror game. Like this game has no reason to you know have that you know restrictive of an inventory system.
Right. Yeah, and that's part of the experience with that. But this here is like there's just no. I just don't understand it. Like there's no sorting by default. Like things are just, and the way when you do group things together, it doesn't group everything of it together. I literally cannot understand what the design decision was to do it this way. Like they could have done anything else and it would have been better than what it is. I do not. So I would love to hear about how the decision was made to do this.
Do you think it's something that, given how they've updated the game so far, do you think that it's something that can be fixed, you know, within the foreseeable future, or is it something that's going to require more time?
I think so. They've done the quick fix, which is to give you the storage space or whatever at your camp, and to give you more inventory space to hold stuff, so you're not having to like make terrible decisions, you know, about what to keep and what to get rid of when you actually may need to keep some stuff. So there is now like enough space for you to just throw stuff in your chest at camp, but it doesn't improve the actual experience of navigating your inventory, which is still kind of bad. I think it's a solvable problem. Yeah, I think either there is a either they're not going to do it and they're going to stick to it because there is some specific reason they like it that way, or it's just something that's taking more time. I could see it being something that takes more time to actually figure out because of the way the grouping works and stuff like that. So, we're only 2 weeks post launch here, basically 2.5. That could be something that, and with all the other updates that have come out, they've been busy clearly. So it could be something that comes in the future. But going back to what you were asking about, like the reception, the pre-release reviewers were having to deal with all these things, and it still scored pretty well. And you see the positive reaction of gamers, getting it on day one. Probably a lot of the negative day one reviews are because of the learning curve and the mechanics and getting a hold of all that.
Right.
And then you see, as people finally spend more time with the game, they turn a corner, which is exactly the trajectory that I did too. Like once I realized, okay, this is not The Witcher, this is not an Assassin's Creed, this is not a Zelda game. Like, you have to understand the mechanics that they're laying out for you and engage with them that way. It's not story heavy. Like, the story is you're not gonna get excited about what's going on in the story here. Once you
but I think that's exciting
things,
to, a particular type of player, because, Tears of the Kingdom isn't exactly, award-winning storytelling either, right? Like, and, Breath of the Wild, I think, is even a better example of just a game that was even lighter in terms of story. So, like, I think there are definitely, but yeah, I mean, to your point, like, I think it's, you have to, there's a point where, like, you kind of just have to set aside your expectations based on, like, what other third person action adventure games have come before.
Exactly. Yes. And so I think two things on that. One, I think it's good that people are coming around on what Crimson Desert is doing here, because I think, switching topics slightly, I think that most, like, big third world, open world, third person, action adventure kind of games like this, they all kind of fall into similar molds. I mean, obviously, kind of Breath of the Wild carved its own path, and it was, the accolades speak for themselves at this point. But a lot of games kind of follow either the Witcher path or the Assassin's Creed path, And I think it's good that we're getting something that's, like, it's different. It's different in that, yes, it takes basically all the mechanics from these other games and puts them into one. But what it does with all that, it does feel like something of its own, the way that it goes about it, and it's so, like, maximalist in its design decisions. I think, I hope that this kind of, and like, its success and the decisions it made, I really hope that it kind of reignites the investment that publishers are willing to fund for games like this, because selfishly, this is one of my favorite game genres, and the fact that we're getting something that feels like pretty new and exciting in this area is really cool to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely lessons to be learned from sort of a lot of the criticisms of the game, and just it being a victim of its own size, I think, or just ambition. But yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of cool new ideas here, and I'm glad it's found an audience. It's selling incredibly well. I think it's going to continue to sell incredibly well as the community sort of forms around this game. I think the snowball is only really sort of just now starting to form in terms of the high level players getting out there and making content around this game. And I think the more of that you'll see sales of this game continue to snowball and sell well. And yeah, I mean, hopefully it does challenge some of the status quo in modern, Western open world design. I think, that's a genre that, pending GTA 6 is due for some shakeups. So I think between this and GTA 6, you have some potentially genre defining open world games here this year.
Yeah, I agree. This will probably have, just because of how long it's going to take people to get through, like the average gamer, or even the person who doesn't, who buys like 4 games a year or whatever, those people will come into this later. It'll take them longer to
Yeah.
get through it. But so I think this will have a long tail, and I mean, and judging by the reaction from like these updates coming out already, it seems like we're probably going to get a lot of post-release updates for this game, and how
Yeah.
successful it's been. So yeah, I think the opportunity is there for this to have a really long tail, something like Cyberpunk. It's still getting
Yeah.
expansions, and or not expansions anymore, but it was still getting patches up until last year. Adding little bits of new content here and there. Could totally see the same thing happening here. I mean, the world is enormous. The number of mechanics that they have at their disposal to just like make new stuff with is really unlike anything else out there. So like the world is their oyster, truly, for whatever kind of content they want to make. They've laid the groundwork here, and there's a ton of content already, but whatever the possibilities there are for much more.
Yeah, no, I will jump into it at some point this year. I think I'm just going to wait for the right time and price, and it's definitely a game I want to try out because it it speaks to me just in terms of like some of the mechanics that it's doing. So yeah, I mean, I think if I can muscle through some of the shortcomings, I think I'll enjoy it.
I do think, I mean, for you personally, like knowing how you feel about some other open world games, I do think you're going to like this. I think the important thing to note here is that it requires some patience. Like I said, like the first 10 hours, I was like, oh, like you could see what some good things are happening, but it's like, man, like I don't know if the rest of this is really gonna work for me. And then you got to kind of settle in with it and be patient, and get used to the mechanics. And like I still want to keep, like, let me put it this way, and this is going to sound probably controversial to some folks, but after 15 hours of this game, I am much more interested in playing more of this than I was after 15 hours of Resident Evil 9. Like, like my over the further I've gotten into this game, the more I want to keep playing it, which was, not necessarily the opposite for Resident Evil, but
Yeah.
I'm trending in a better direction than I was with Resident Evil.
I'm glad you brought up Resident Evil because I put out a short using your take on the dual protagonist setup, and we got torn to shreds on TikTok. I mean, I would say you could probably predict that would have happened, but yeah, I mean, people tore us to shreds, and I mean, the more I play it, the more I find myself agreeing with you on that take. But yeah, I mean, I think just, to kind of give my sort of top level quick review of Resident Evil Requiem so far is that it's another great Resident Evil game. Like, just, I think the standard they've set is just so high that it's really hard to clear it these days. Whereas I think this one is totally fine. Like, it meets the threshold of what a really good Resident Evil game is. I definitely see some of your complaints about the dual protagonist thing. I definitely see what's going on there. So, but I want to see it through until the end. But I definitely think that Crimson Desert is going to be the game that I jump into after that, or at least at some point over the summer. I think it's a game that I will enjoy for various reasons. Do you see yourself, you mentioned turning the corner, like, do you see yourself putting much more time into it? Yeah,
I do. Yeah, I'm going to continue to put time into it. Like I said, for a game, knowing myself and knowing my history with uber long games, I historically have needed a really strong narrative to be able to complete those games. I almost always. Yeah. And I don't think this doesn't have that. What I think will probably happen here is I'll probably put a lot more time into it, I would guess. But I will just, when I'm done, like when I get tired of the mechanics that are there, and I've seen, what I feel is pretty much everything to see in the world, that'll probably be it. Like, I won't feel the need to press on because of any story reasons or anything like that. but I would come back for any kind of DLC or something like that. Like I'll come back for updates because, it's just a fun world to explore. The traversal mechanics are cool. And, later in the game, you get some kind of like flying mount. So that seems awesome. So yeah, I mean, I dig it. It's a very flawed game. Like I could list off a ton more flaws with this game. Like when you pick apart the individual pieces, there are quite a few things that are kind of problematic, but the rate at which they're fixing the biggest issues and just kind of like the sum of the parts being pretty compelling has been worth it for me so far.
Well, that's Crimson Desert. It is out everywhere, like I said, and yeah, I fully intend to jump into it. We're going to take a quick break, though, before I jump into it. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Screamer and the Division Resurgence. Stay right there. And we're back. Matthew, let me tell you about Screamer, which is a racing game. It's developed and published by Milestone SRI. So for those of you who don't know, they've done the Hot Wheels Unleashed games that have come out and sort of hit recently. Those have sort of found a pretty cool audience. But they've been around forever, since the 90s, doing these sort of arcade racing games, simulation style as well. Like they've done work on like the MotoGP series, if you're familiar with like those motorbikes, motorsport games. So Screamer was actually their first game, or one of their first games as a studio, released all the way back in 1995. And it was by and large just a regular traditional racing game, at the time for PC. And so this is a reboot of that game, but with a completely new coat of paint. And by a completely new coat of paint, I mean an anime aesthetic complete with a full story mode. So much so that I would say story is actually a core like focus and pillar of this game. Don't jump into this expecting like sort of a run of the mill career mode. Like this is the game is telling you a story, and it's all wrapped up in this really cool, cartoony, flashy anime, like 90s anime aesthetic. Before I jump into like my thoughts, I kind of want to jump into how the game plays, because it's very unique for a racing game. It's very much in that arcade racer realm, where it uses a dual stick drift system. And so what I mean by that is when you're driving, obviously you're using your right trigger for acceleration, your left trigger for braking. Your left stick is going to steer you. However, that steer is, I would say, functionally useless. We can get into that later, but what the game wants you to do is use the right stick to handle drifting. So they want you to drift through turns, and obviously it's all very street racing inspired. So it's all about drifting through these turns, and sort of mastering the timing around that. Like your approach angles matter as well. So all that to say, the drifting speed or all of that feeds into a like a car combat game as well. So to set the stage there, you are gaining boost by clean racing, or by racing at max speed. And then once you build up enough boost, you're building up boost, you're using the boost to give yourself like temporary speed boost, and then by doing that you give yourself attack charges, which you can then use to attack and like eliminate players in the field. Once you've done that, they if you eliminate a player, you get rewarded with more boosts, so there's like a nice little cycle there as well. So yeah, let's get into how I'm feeling about it so far. It's really kind of hard to describe how I feel about this game, because I think the skill ceiling is so very, very high. Like, I can see the potential for this game, like finding a really cool, hardcore, dedicated audience that masters this. And like, I feel like with a group of friends, it is a blast. However, I feel like there's like playing alone, both through the story mode and just the regular arcade mode, it really starts to reveal a lot of the problems I have with the game, which is that while the action is cool, like while everything happening on screen is really cool, the sort of competitive balance doesn't seem to really work out. The AI, like computer opponents, seem to not have to follow the same rules as far as the driving. Like there are very specific turns that I've noticed where the AI won't have to go into a drift to complete the turn, whereas if you do not go into a drift, you will slam into a wall. And so I feel like there are some built-in difficulty advantages that the AI is given that just ultimately make this a really challenging game, and that really sort of undoes the entire story mode. So yeah, I think we can start from there.
Yeah, it seems to me, I've not yet played this game. I am pretty interested in checking it out. I have read so many descriptions of like the mechanics, just setting aside the like story emphasis, which I think is really interesting and sets it apart alone. But the mechanics at play here seem very complicated and very like unlike any other racing game like this. Like, I think you could look at the stylization of this and think, oh, like, they're doing like a Need for Speed type thing or something. And it sounds like that analysis would be completely wrong, and the people that went into this thinking that that's what they were going to get would be very like off-put. I was initially like very off-put by it as well. Sorry, you were going to ask a question. Well, you were actually good at getting her to answer. I was going to say, so how does this actually, like, from a, like, we distill this down into the pure driving experience, like the mechanics, the power-ups and boosts that you're getting while driving. Like, if we just strip away everything outside of that for now, how does it hold up as a driving game compared to some of the heavy hitters in the genre?
That's where I really struggle with it, because I think there's a lot of potential here. Like, I don't think that the dual stick drifting is inherently a bad thing. I just think when paired with the more combat focused things like slamming into, like you can also build up, like if you don't use your attack charges, you can build up and store your charge over time and do like this mega like overdrive attack. So it just seems like the emphasis on stylish and clean driving is at odds with the combat focus. And so I think that paired with the overall difficulty makes it really hard to recommend to someone who just wants a sort of casual, stylish looking game. And also, like, because of the emphasis on skill and like mastering the mechanics here, there is no real upgrade system. Like, you're not, like, I was expecting something akin to a Need for Speed Underground, where you've got your cars, you're upgrading, like making it faster, adding more boost, more drift, whatever it may be. In this, like, the unlocks are all purely cosmetic, which are cool. Like, it definitely feels like, if I had to give one of a compliment to one of the games is that it's the sense of progression is really strong. Whether you're playing in the story mode or in the arcade mode, you're sort of always unlocking, different cosmetics and different body kits and things like that. It's very Super Smash Brothers like, which I really like and enjoy. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're going into this expecting something where, like you're starting out small, progressing, and eventually like just sort of over time getting better and, improving your cars to a point where like they give you a competitive advantage, like this isn't going to be it. Like this is very much a get good racing game, and I think that's going to only appeal to a certain amount of people.
Yeah, I mean, my this very much looks like, you can look at the output from Milestone, this company, and they have put out like racing game after racing game for like decades now, essentially. Most of them licensed in some capacity. This feels like them saying, okay, we are all, everyone that works here is extremely accomplished and knows how to make a racing game. We now have the bandwidth to make something that isn't tied to an official license, and we're going to make this one for the sickos, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like they basically just probably like took all of the stuff that they like and that they haven't been able to put into their other output, like a story mode. Like that's also anime, like they just threw it all in the pot, all the stuff that they like, and made it specifically for that. So it does feel like this is going to have a super niche audience, but for those people, it is going to it's going to hit hard, And
I've seen it, right? Like I've seen people say that this is like a game of the year contender for them. And like, I see it, like I see the vision there. And like, I want more than anything in the world for my thumbs to do the right things. And like, so that I can finish higher than like 4th place in a race one time, right? Like it is incredibly challenging. It is. And, I think even looking past some of the sort of like issues I have with the balancing of it, I think once again, like if you have a group of 4 friends who are into it and like understand what the game is about, like I would probably pick this over Mario Kart World. Like I think when everything is working and firing on all cylinders, not to mention like each of these characters that you unlock either through the story or other means, they all have different abilities, they all have different upsides, downsides. So, on top of the sort of mechanical complexity, they do add on like the characters having their own sort of unique buffs and traits as well. So, once again, it's another thing to manage and to keep up with. And I think it's really only going to appeal to, those who like the Venn diagram of people who are really into hero shooters, but are also into like drifting street culture. So yeah, like it's already like you're already targeting a really niche audience. The game is $60. So it's like, it's one of those things that's like, I hope it finds the audience. And I wish that I was a part of that audience, but it is just, like I'm not one of the sickos, unfortunately. Just to touch on the story real quick, no spoilers. It is like, it's presented like almost visual novel style. Like it's presented similarly to kind of like a Persona game where you've got just like the silhouette, not the silhouette, but like the sort of, like the drawing of a character, avatar of a character, and then just dialogue underneath going back and forth. The stories, like I think there's potential there. But I think, another, a complaint I had about the story specifically is that it will add on mechanics. So what I described as far as like the racing is sort of the end goal, right? The story is sort of a slow burn, slow progression getting there, where they're layering on everything, which is, I think, there are times where I think it's paced well and times where I think it's not. But then there are times where like they'll add on a layer, but then the next race they'll take it away. And so that leads to moments where like, okay, like there are just, like there's a sequence or a race right now that I just literally can't progress because I don't have like access to the full gameplay suite of, driving racing mechanics. And so like that sort of led me to just not want to play the story mode anymore, right? Like I just kind of wanted to get the full experience, the full gameplay experience. So I ended up having more fun doing that. But, I can't speak to the story like other than really like the first main chapter, like the first, like there's I think there's 3 or 4 parts to it. So, and I'm almost done with like the first part. It's fine. Like it seems kind of like a generic crime, like you're part of like it focuses in on all of the different teams that are participating in this tournament and like what their motivations are and why they're there. Some of them are like inherently good, some of them are inherently bad. So you kind of get a sense of like this cast of characters and who they are, and so I think that's going to appeal to people who like big ensemble anime where like there's just a diverse cast of characters with differing motivations. I think all of that is good. I just think the moment to moment stuff wasn't compelling enough to make me like push through some of the more challenging elements.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a bummer to hear. I mean, when you have such a, I don't know, when they put as much emphasis on the story as they do here, like it kind of has to be good, right? Like,
yeah,
I think if you were to sit here and tell me, oh yeah, this story is like fantastic and it's tying into the mechanics and the story races really well, I'd be like, great. Like, where do I sign up? Like, let me play this right now. But when you start to say like, the story's not that compelling or it's a little bit generic, and the mechanical restrictions that they're placing on you in these story races is actively working to the detriment of what, of how fun the races are to actually take part in, that I don't know, that kind of seems like it undermines like everything that they're trying to do, which is sort of a bummer.
And that's kind of where I come away with on the game overall, where it's like there's a lot of good here, but it is undermined by some of just the core decisions that got made. Like I think the 2 biggest ones for me are like, I think the emphasis on drifting and clean driving is cool, but paired with the emphasis on combat is problematic, right? And then going back to like the emphasis on the story is like, it seems like there was a lot put into this to a point where like when I became less interested in completing it, that like it completely diminished my view of the game like as a complete package. Because it really is I would say a core pillar of the game's experience. Like if you're not planning on playing the story, then like you're probably gonna waste money buying this.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that sort of ties into one of my other questions here, which is like, this is technically a reboot of a 90s series, like Screamer 1 and Screamer 2. But from what I understand, like the original series didn't have any of the sort of the trappings that, are going on here. Like it was sort of more of a standard, classic driving game. Does this, I mean, I don't know if you played the original at all, but like, is there a reason why they attached the name to this game, or was it more just like hey, we've got this IP and like we might as well just like bring it back for people who do have nostalgia for it, sort of situation?
Yeah, it's probably the latter. I don't see, anything in like researching the original game versus what this one looks like and resembles the direction they went with this for this one. It really just does seem like, like let's lean into what we like as a studio. They partnered with an external animation studio to develop like sort of all the animated content. So, I think it really just seems like something like a direction that they wanted to go in for their next game. And they just wanted to attach it to a previous IP. It didn't really seem like, like there was anything like in terms of a nod to, those original games. Not that I would recognize it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of odd, but I mean, I guess that's also sort of a sign of the times a bit. But I mean, I think I mean, all things considered, I think it's cool that this studio got to make, I mean, it sounds like they got to make the game that they really wanted to make here. I'd actually forgotten that this was a Game Awards reveal a couple of years ago. So yeah, I mean, it's cool that a studio that got to flex their muscle a little bit, even if it doesn't land on everything. It's going to be for some people. And, my general feelings are that more games should be for specific groups of people and less try to be for everybody. So, I mean, this sounds like, they did that, and I like that.
Yeah, and I like the fact that it was, it's developed, it's self-published, so it very much seems like this is the game that they wanted to make. And like it gives me a little bit of like a sigh of relief, even if the game doesn't find, huge commercial successes, that they're not beholden to, corporate overlords or, like obviously they have to find funding for their next game, but that's a smaller problem than, trying to manage the margins that are sort of becoming the expectation of the EAs of the world. If this were being developed as a Need for Speed game, I would worry more about the team making that than this. So I hope the people they made it for find it and play it and love it, because I see that I can see there's a lot of potential for it. But yeah, I wish them well. And, if you are one of those sickos, you can play Screamer right now on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series consoles, and it's out on PC as well. That's what I played it on. It looks great. It plays great. Like the art style is amazing. It's got, I would say the soundtrack is mixed, but it's got what I would say like some of the sickest like menu music of all time. So like if you like style, if you like action, and if you're willing to sort of master the difficult driving, I think there's a really cool game in here for you.
Awesome.
Speaking of cool games, Matthew, we've been checking out Tom Clancy's The Division Resurgence, the aptly named Tom Clancy's The Division Resurgence. There's a new Division game that came out in 2026, but it is not out on consoles. It's out on mobile phones. We've been playing. This came out March 31st, so it's the newest game of the bunch. It's out on iOS and Android. It's free to play. It's essentially The Division, like for all intents and purposes. I've only played a couple of hours of it and done a few missions, but my top level sort of thoughts on it are like, yeah, like they have taken sort of the console experience of The Division and distilled it onto just in a mobile format, which I think is sort of commendable in and of itself. Matthew, what do you think of it so far?
I'm not super far into it either. It sounds like maybe I've played about the amount that you have, which is that I actually just finished the like intro missions before you get to the open world. So like I've been introduced to all the mechanics, gone through a couple boss fights, and I've kind of been like let loose a little bit. So I haven't really seen just how open the open world is yet. But yeah, I mean, I think at a high level, it seems like The Division. I mean, I think, just looking back to start with here, The Division, I think has, The Division 1 holds up very well. I think like looking back, by the way, 2016, I was looking back, like kind of an underrated year in gaming. If you look at it, I think a lot of the games that were released that year aged really well.
Uncharted, Overwatch, Doom, the original Doom, or Doom 2016 rather. Yeah, it was a good year.
Dishonored 2, Deus Ex, Mankind Divided. It was. Yeah,
and the original Division, which I played a lot of when it first came out, and I had my fun with it. I know it's kind of easy to sort of dunk on Ubisoft these days, but like those the Division 1 and the Division 2 are really good open world shooters, and they've maintained a really strong audience through over the years.
They have good campaigns too. Like their linear missions that they're taking you through are fun as well. Like they take you to the, they're very, especially that first one, like the winter in New York, like the sense of place was super strong in that one. I really liked the feeling of that. Like it had a very strong ambiance about it. Right at Christmas time, when the flu broke out. Just very distinctive. I mean, even all these years later, I still remember exactly how it felt to like run around in that world. And this Division 2 wasn't quite as successful in that regard, but was still a good game. And I mean, I think my early impressions of this are that it seems like they've managed to capture most of the mechanical trappings of the Division to bring it to mobile. I mean, it goes back to New York. Like it's not a reboot, but it's like a parallel story to the first one. I'm not sure
Yeah.
that the like story is going to be anything to write home about, but yeah, early impressions is that, it seems like it's had some care put into it.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the fact that takes place in New York, set around the time as the first game. Like, I mean, really, like that's sort of the big thing that stood out to me so far in the early going is that they are really going for evoking that the same sense that they were, in the first game of just trying to make things feel as close to the outbreak as possible. Like I said, same location as that first game, so you kind of have that connection as well. I mean, I think overall, like I think it's a good idea to tie it to the original game and sort of get people in. I mean, overall, like, I mean, just zooming out on just from this game specifically, like I am really fascinated and curious about just a lot of these high profile AAA games and franchises making the jump to mobile, right? So you've got this, like there's Destiny Rising, there's, Diablo Immortal, like a lot of these sort of big AAA franchises you're starting to now see pop up on mobile. And, it's interesting to see, obviously, this, I don't know if I've got a question from this, but like, I think it's just more like, it's interesting to look at games like this being made and emphasis on like these games being on mobile, and seeing that in comparison or in conjunction with sort of some of the mass layoffs that you're seeing and a lot of the doom and gloom around the console space. It almost seems like, we're sort of starting to set the ground for a future where a lot of these games, at least the ones that require, like an audience and or run like a live service. I think you're just going to see those pop up and be the primarily playable on mobile now. What do you make of that, Matthew? What do you make of just sort of like the shift to mobile overall for these kind of games? And do you think the Division works in that regard, like the Division Resurgence specifically?
I do agree that it's interesting. I think if you look at the types of games that are being ported to, or not being ported necessarily, but are seeing releases on a mobile platform, they are all games that maybe aren't explicitly live service, but can be altered to include live service elements. I think maybe the Division is like the least live servicey of the ones you mentioned there. And that part, like the monetization part for this game, is going to be super interesting to me. So like comparing this to like Diablo Immortal, I don't play a ton of mobile games. Diablo Immortal is one that I've stuck with. The monetization in that game is terrible. Like if you just, the only way to do it, or to play that game and not like tear your hair out at the monetization, is to just ignore the PvP elements of it, which is where the pay to win stuff comes in for the most part. It doesn't, and so like, and that's, a lot of these mobile games are aimed at different demographics than the console games are. So like, typically like in like China or like, in Asia more generally, you get more mobile players who are more willing to spend money there, or on those types of games, I should say, which has sort of, from anecdotally, from what I've seen in Diablo Immortal, that's held true for that as well. As far as the Division, I mean, it seems like the monetization here is mostly cosmetic. At least that's what they're saying. Yeah. I'm not far enough in yet to see to see if that's true or not myself. Mm-hmm. From what I've read online, it seems like there may be some ways that, you can buy things that kind of skirt around the only cosmetics label, but it can't be any worse than Diablo Immortal is. So I think if they adhere to any kind of moral principles here at all, it'll be an improvement.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much of the monetization either. And, I kind of go into these games with sort of a worst case scenario type of mentality as well. So I also have been playing Diablo Immortal. I picked it back up recently, and I generally avoid the store, menu, just because I know, that I know who's making it. And in this case, I think there's some of that as well, where like, the battle pass is a little bit in your face here. I think that's kind of just, how these games are made anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting because, we're talking about like console prices rising and, the RAM crisis and all of these things that are essentially making like traditional console gaming like just less and less accessible as the generation wages on, that I almost wonder if you see games like this start to pick up and gain more of an audience. And even beyond existing AAA franchises, there's even games like Where the Winds Meet, and obviously Genshin Impact, these mobile / like PC hybrid or games. So I think you're starting to see those crop up a little bit more. And so I think as you see more people get priced out of just like the regular like console market, I think this might be like the alternative as opposed to something like a Roblox.
100%. I mean, the mobile sort of gaming and monetization explosion, I think we're past the peak of that. But as Ubisoft was canceling and consolidating all kinds of studios and projects and all of that over the past couple of years, this game was originally announced in 2022 and was supposed to debut in 2024, but kept getting delayed. There's a reason why, amidst all that, they didn't cancel this and they kept developing it, because they know that the possibility, like the bang for your buck, like what the amount of money they can make off of this game, given the costs of development, are quite high if it hits. And so it behooves them to focus in on that and see what they can get out of the mobile market. I think you're spot on in that, like as the PC hardware gets more unattainable, people will go to other solutions. I don't know that like, do I think somebody who, is super into like, PC RTS games is gonna like convert to being a mobile gamer just because they can't, increase the RAM on the computer? No, but I think it's more like on the front end, like the entry costs for, teenagers or younger who, who are just starting to find the gaming hobby. And even worse, I mean, there's a whole other thing to be said for like, gambling and other kinds of stuff like that. So it can get quite seedy. So, but that's a whole other conversation. But I mean, I think this is not the last game of this kind that we're going to see that comes from a bigger traditionally AAA console PC studio.
Yeah. How does it, I mean, speaking of that, I mean, how does it play for you? Are you using touch controls, using a controller? Does it play well?
It plays pretty well. I mean, like I've been using the touch controls. I want to connect a controller because I think that's definitely going to be the superior experience.
I'm having a hard time with the touch controls, but it is pushing me to look into a controller as well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've been playing on an iPad, so I have not seen it on a phone-sized device. I imagine that would be very difficult because there's a lot of buttons on that screen for you to click or accidentally click when you're trying to do something else. But in defense of that, it feels like the full Division experience. Like there's no Division mechanic that they have left out here. Like you have everything down to your like, your technical abilities, like to throw turrets or pull out your ultimate or whatever. It's all there, and the stats on your gear, it doesn't seem to be like filed down at all really. So far, it seems to be full fledged.
I agree. Yeah, like it's the movement, the cover, like all of that stuff feels true to the original games. Yeah, I just the touchscreen controls on on a phone specifically make it tough. So I am gonna invest, I think, in a like a grip controller type device, mainly because I just find myself playing more games on my phone. So why not? But yeah, I think that'll sort of lead me to play more of it. I'm curious. I think it'll stay on my phone for a while, but I don't know if it'll keep me invested long term. So I'll be interested to see.
Yeah, it'll come down to like what the dailies are, right? Like once you've experienced the story that they've released so far, what are you doing? I think the thing that plagued the original Division for me, I did stick with that into the end game for a while, but the problem that it butted up against was that enemies just became bullet sponges. Like
Yeah.
you could have excellent weapons, but the enemies were just tanks regardless, and it felt like you were unloading clip after clip into them without any kind, like there was just nothing else you could do. So
I've seen that in a couple of instances where like I was under leveled and it's like, oh yeah, like these guys can be kind of bullet spongy.
Yeah, and it's one thing if you're under leveled, but like in an end game scenario, especially in like a mobile game, we'll have to see if that becomes an issue, because I think if that is kind of like the ongoing experience with it, it's probably not going to keep me coming back after I finish the story stuff. But I do want to see how they deal with the open world New York. This thing has the Dark Zone mode as well.
Yeah, I want to try that out, and I'm curious to, with how the limitations of touch controls, like just how it. But yeah, I mean, like I have no doubts that it's the full Dark Zone experience given what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I mean, I so far I'm mildly impressed by what they put together here. Yeah, I'm gonna keep playing it.
Tom Clancy's The Division Resurgence. What? Don't you guys have phones? It's on iOS and Android. It's free to play. Download it. Play it now. Try it out. Matthew, it's been real fun talking with you about video games, but we are going to have to call it tonight. It's been real fun. Don't forget, guys, you guys can follow us on whatever social platform and listen to us on whatever service that you get your podcast on. Just find us at timekillerspod.com. Don't forget that you can submit your questions, your thoughts, your hot takes over at timekillerspod.com/AMA. And other than that, we love you guys, and we will see you guys on the next one.
Peace.